the creative journey. It's easy to get lost, but don't worry, you'll lift off. Sometimes you just need a creative pep talk.
How do you find that belonging that you're looking for in your creative practice? I remember this moment at a particular conference prior to 2020, we'll say, mid 2010s, where it was the after party and I was just feeling in the right place at the right time, just so in sync, just in that sweet spot creatively. And it's an incredible thing. The only problem is that it's temporary, that these spaces change, and what feels right today won't necessarily be where you need to be tomorrow. And so if you're in a place where the platform that used to feel like home feels stagnant, or has maybe rapidly changed, or if you feel like the tools and the instruments that used to feel like an extension of your body now feel clumsy and awkward, or maybe you used to work in this medium or industry and it used to feel like a perfect fit, but now it feels like an itchy sweater. If that's you, if you're feeling that chafing and you don't feel that fit and that belonging, what do you do? How do you start to navigate transitions like that? Today on the show, we've got a longtime friend of the podcast and a friend of mine, someone who I just absolutely adore and loved catching up with. Morgan Harper Nichols is back, poet, visual artist, and just, neurodivergent friend of mine. We just can go into these rabbit holes and just get lost talking about creative stuff. And that's what we did today. And it was tons of fun, very, very inspiring. And I'm excited for you to dive in. I feel like the conversation just gets better and better, and we get some really, really interesting stuff. So stick around for all of that, and then stick to the end, because I'm going to be back with the CTA, the call to adventure, how to put some of this stuff to practice. The CTA this week is called the 5 Senses of Belonging. And this was a little exercise that really helped me tap into a surprising insight of where I might feel like I belong today, like what I'm going to do today creatively. And so stick around for that. I think it's a really cool exercise that comes from something that Morgan said. But without further ado, let's get into it. Here is my chat with Morgan Harper Nichols. Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm like counting down the weeks until summer break with school. I'm like, 5 weeks left.
That's so funny. I was like, wait, with your kids? Like what?
Oh, yeah, for me.
Your school. Yeah.
Yeah, for
so
my
funny.
school, I am ready to be done. I now that like the weather's just getting a little bit nicer, it's just like, this is like be outside for a little bit, not do anything weather. So I'm gonna need this to wrap one up soon.
Doing school for a long time, so I couldn't internalize that you were talking about yourself.
Yeah, you're like, what are you talking about?
That's so funny.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
One thing I was thinking about, we're going through crazy times in the world, have been for, most of our adult life, I think.
Yeah. Very true.
But I was thinking about how you're familiar with like simulation theory.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we're living in a simulation.
Yes.
And I thought, while I have you here, it's off topic, but I thought you could speak to like, if you were running this simulation and we were putting us through all this crap, like what would your purpose be, having been such an avid Sims game player?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you've got some insight into what are we trying to accomplish in this society, throwing all of these things, pandemic and just madness, and,
absolutely
crises after crises. What do we think the simulation boss is doing here?
Yes, I think what we need to do, just like in Sims 4,
Yeah.
they have well, let me actually go back,
Okay.
and
Further back.
My Sims players will know.
Yeah.
Before Sims 4, and maybe this is where things start to change, and we need to go back to how it was in this regard, in that you used to be able to build your own world. And
Mm.
now in Sims 4, you have to select areas of the world. You used to
Mm.
be able to like shift the terrain and like figure out what the landscape is going to be like, what the climate is going to be like. And I think we need to go back to that phase. We need to get everybody in a room. It's like before you get your ideas and before you start just trying stuff, let's start
Let's
with the
chat.
basics, it's
Put our
like
heads together.
yes, like do we need to get some Legos out and work on some basic conflict resolution? Um, just at
Let's get
that
some
level before we give you more responsibility. How about
miniature
that? Like,
models and we'll like
yes.
plan it out. Yeah,
Mhm.
that makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah, okay.
Yes. I
We
actually
need to go back. Sims
I
2 or whatever it was.
yeah, I actually think there's really something to that. How things like I I can't remember, but there was like a random hearing in some state where somebody was like suing because they couldn't buy the parts to replace his like dishwasher or something, and he was like,
Oh,
why was it sold to me like all set up in a certain way? Like I want to be able to go in and like buy the parts to fix my own dishwasher. And I think about
yeah,
that a lot. It may not have been a dishwasher, but it was some kind of
yeah.
something like that. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, yeah, like we need more structural
Agent
yeah.
agency to
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
well, it's interesting,
Yeah.
honestly, we had our dryer fixed 'cause, today we had a guy come in and he said, "You've got pencils in your dryer." So
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's probably my fault as an illustrator. But Sophie posted about it. But, he was like, "Hang on to this for as long as possible because the new ones, they don't make parts for it.
Wow.
They like, if
There we
it
go.
breaks, it's
Yep.
done." It's
Mm,
that exact thing. And so are you
mm.
saying that are you what are you saying? You're saying that
Yes. I
go ahead.
yeah, I think it's like, and I say this as somebody who loves technology. I do think that like we kind of get sold on the idea of things being smart, like
Mhm.
smart refrigerator, smartphone, smart this, smart that. And it's like, well, okay, I'm cool with you being smart, but can I see how you're smart? Because for us
Yeah,
humans,
true, but
we have to show our work, like we
yeah,
have to show it. And I think for me, it's like I think there was like this era of like being very excited about like this futuristic like I don't know if you've seen Xenon the sequel. That's probably not the best example for everyone to know, but it was like a very, I would say it leans toward a utopian view of the future.
yeah.
A lot of
Right.
millennials, if you're a millennial watching Disney Channel, you probably remember that. But
Xenon,
yeah,
is that what it's
yeah,
called?
Xenon the
Yeah,
sequel.
I
Yes, they
remember that.
lived outer space, and yeah, it was just like, oh yeah, good times. The future's gonna be great. We're gonna live in space. It'll all be fine. Like everything's gonna be figured out. Um, so I think there was like, at least for me, I feel like there was like, oh, like these things they could be so helpful to make everything better. But it's like if things in the future aren't like where other people can like be a part of it and like see how they're being made, and I think that is going to it just kind of recreates the same problem. So yeah,
Yeah.
I become like I'm not a very like, I don't like I feel like the way I'm talking sounds like I wanna go outside and, like, fix my car and, and learn I'm not saying that, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I'm grateful that I don't have to do" like, I feel very privileged that I, 1, have a car, and 2, like, that there's people in the world that can help me figure that out. I appreciate that, but
Sure.
I also just sometimes like as an artist and a writer and as a parent now like watching your child like watching my child just like building block by building block learn it all, it's like, oh, there's something really to that and like learning the basics like one by one. Like my son is 5 and he had like a school lesson on like learning about other people's cultures, and it was very interesting to hear that as an adult because it's like you
Mm.
forget, no, that's something that you have to learn to like care
Yeah.
about other people's cultures and to like
Yeah.
be aware that people are different from you, and like and that they were using like the example of food and like spending a lot of time on that, and I was like, yeah, it's probably a lot of grown-ups like, just going back to
Refresher.
yeah.
Just,
It's like
yeah.
we need to go back to the open world. Let's start with the terrain, get the basics. So yes.
Yeah, you know what? That's really interesting too, because it kind of like, I don't know this super intimately, but I know in a vague sense that like simulation theory, the matrix, that kind of idea
Mhm.
is based on simulacra and this philosophy of you're living in a simulation. But I think it was, I'm going to make a fool of myself, Jean Bull. I didn't need to
Is
go there.
it
Bull,
Baudrillard? Like,
yeah,
or the
Baudrillard.
other
I
yes.
don't know why. I should have just
A
not even
French
looked at it.
name.
Yeah, I thought I had it right there, and then I was like, no, it doesn't translate to words. But Baudrillard, something like that.
Yeah, something like
And the
that.
idea
Something
is
like that.
that, as far as I understand it, is the simulation that they were suggesting
Mhm.
wasn't a literal simulation, but this idea that the world that you were born into is a construction,
Mhm.
just kind of like what you're getting at, that
Yeah.
all these systems and rules and buildings and all these things were built that, and you're brought in and you're told this is the way it is, but it isn't the
Mhm.
way it is. It's the way that
Mhm.
people decided it would be.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an interesting realization to be like, oh, you actually have agency to reject that, build on it,
Yeah.
whatever. But we're living increasingly in a time where our structures are so dense
Mhm.
that we don't really see our ability. And the thing that's even weirder about that to me is, as you're thinking about like AI, one of the things that they talk about is, I don't know if we're here yet. We might actually already be here, but I know that where they're trying to go is where we won't know how the AI is getting the answers that it's getting, in terms of
Mm.
we won't see it showing its work. And eventually we won't even know what it's doing really, once it surpasses our
Yeah.
computing, and so that's like the extreme case of like
Mhm.
literally we will not know, we
Yeah,
won't.
just like a black box.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about the black
I don't
box.
know
Like,
about that either.
it's a
Yeah,
struggle for me because, and I think for me, my first like realization of like the extremes of what that could be was with social media. Like as we know, like social media has algorithms, which so a lot of people don't realize, but like social media is like kind of like all AI, like
right,
it's all machine learning. Like
right,
it's
yeah,
it's a different version of the same thing. It might not be like generative AI in the same way, but it's like it does kind of it has a lot of similarities, and I find that very interesting because it's like you really don't get a lot of information as to how this thing is structured, and you just get kind of thrown into it, and they give you a few buttons and they say, okay, you can post this here, and then now they have like you can get a bonus, and if you post these many times and all these things, and it's like okay, that's that's nice to have shortcuts and see that, but at the same time it's like but we didn't get to decide like
yeah,
what the buttons would be. They were metrics based on how people click on a screen or how long you stop on a video but you didn't like the video, so how are we going to show you the video a different way next time?
yeah.
So that kind of black box aspect of it to me, I do struggle with that. Like, and I think in some ways it's why I have like a very like mixed relationship with technology. Like when anything new comes out, I actually go all deep into it. I'm like, I want to know how this thing works, and I want to know what's not being communicated, what's being shared publicly, or and I'm like that with whether it's social media or AI or whatever, or a fancy smart car, which I mean I don't have, but I'm just like, yeah, how does this work? I'm very interested in that. And then like I did sometimes it does lead to despair, like it can lead to like, oh, this is a lot. This is a lot that I don't know. I can't know it all, but I want to know more than I know. But then the other side of it is like, wait, but that's actually my creative process.
Mm,
It's I don't know. Like a lot of times, like the metaphor I've been using a lot is like I feel like I swim in pools. Like So like I feel like I swim in pools of images and like pools of words. And if you're in a pool, sometimes you're in a part of a pool where it's like, okay, I'm in like the kids section. You know, I can feel where my feet are. I'm not really thinking too much, but there's other parts of the pool that are deeper. It's like, okay, even if you know how to swim, like it's still a little bit deeper. You have to pay a little bit more attention.
Mm.
And I've been thinking about it that way in terms of like, I kind of like, it's not that I don't like the mystery black box kind of thing. It's just, I want to be able to create that in a way. So what I've done is like,
Mm.
I actually have, and it's like just out of my reach. Oh, and I started reorganizing it, so it doesn't look good right now. But I have like just like a cheap file cabinet box where I started cutting up words, and I started like taking my existing work and cutting up words, and like I just put the words in the box and then I like shake it up,
Yeah.
and it's my own writing. So when I see it, I kind of know like, okay, I was talking about that. But then I kind of like make new combinations like out of my own work. And it's just been really like, it's been really like just revitalizing like the way I think about how things can be made.
Mm.
It's like I'm allowed to like play with the structure, including the structures I've built. It's like I
Yeah.
have some things I've written. I know it so well off the top of my head. I'm like, I can cut that up too. Why not? Like,
Yeah.
let's cut it up. Let's see. So I've been doing a lot of collage and just like allowing myself to like play with those like structural elements more and break it apart. And I find that to be like really freeing because it's
Mm.
like I'm still on social media. Like I'm still like a lot of times in the same spaces, but it's just like a small way that I feel like, well, here's like my kind of subversion of it. Like there's a movie called Ready Player One. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen it, but there's I
I've
don't think
read a
I'm
little bit of the book, so I kind of know the
oh,
con.
oh, okay. Yeah, I've never read the book, but
I
I
haven't
don't
read
think
the
I'm
whole thing. I
yeah, I
just
don't
saw
think I'm
pictures, maybe.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by the book now. So I don't think I'm spoiling this when I'm saying it because it
Okay.
happens pretty early in the movie.
Right. It's
But
like
there's a
part of the
scene where the
premise.
yeah, there's a scene where the main character they're getting ready to do a race and he's in the race, but he decides to start the race by putting the car in reverse and
Mm.
going the exact opposite way. And he ends up, so I think he wins. I actually can't remember what
Right.
happens,
Yeah.
but he's still a part of the race. And I love that scene
Mm.
because I'm like, that to me is what this moment feels a lot. I'm like, okay, I'm on Earth. I'm not really trying to leave Earth personally. I'm like I'm here. Okay, I've accepted it.
Yeah.
At this moment, I don't know. A really cool spaceship could come down tomorrow, and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, they actually have a great pitch. Let's
Right.
go. Let's go to this new planet they're discussing. That could
You're
happen. It
open.
hasn't happened yet.
I like you're
But
keeping your options open. You're
yeah,
like, look, I'm on Earth. I'm staying there. Well, maybe not. Okay. Convince me.
exactly.
Somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you never know these days. So, yeah, at the moment I'm like, all right, I'm here.
Yeah.
And here on this earth there are structures in place, there are systems, there are things that I'm like, okay, all right, I didn't make that. I didn't get to decide on any of this. But
Hmm.
I think about like, well, what's my version of like going in reverse? What's my version of
Yeah.
like cutting things up? What's my version of like subverting what is? And that's been keeping me going. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, there's so many things to pull at here. I'll start with I'm not anti Enneagram, but I'm not a huge Enneagram person. Like,
Mhm.
I spent some time like exploring it and whatever. And there's cool things about it. I like personalities. I do like personality like frameworks. I do.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interested in that.
Same. Me too.
But I'm open with it. It's more like it's similar to the way that you're cutting up your poems and stuff. That's
Mhm.
kind of how I think about personality tests, where it's like, what can I see in this
Mhm.
rather than this is what it is. Like, I don't know if that
Mhm.
makes sense, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
more just like frameworks for like thinking through
Yeah.
personality. And the Enneagram 4, which is like a thing that a lot of artists relate to, they're drawn to what's missing.
Mm.
And I do think artists have a thing
Mhm.
of, I think it's why so often the creative thing is the opposite of whatever's happening. It's whatever the
Mhm.
mainstream is doing or whatever the dominant worldview is. The creative notion is the thing that's doing the opposite of that or subverting that, just like you're saying.
Mhm.
And so I really relate to that. It sounds like that's a little bit of what you're kind of exploring. And
Yeah.
I've related that this idea of going backwards in the car, like what is the subversive thing to do in a moment where um what's the subversive thing, the creative thing to do when what the mainstream is doing is, you know, quote unquote, being creative with
Mm.
loading the universe with content, right? So
Mhm.
I've had that same feeling over the past few years. At first, I was kind of like, well, the opposite of that would be doing nothing. And
Mhm.
so that was very uninspiring because you're like, but I am creative. Like, I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think where I've landed now is I've shifted gears to doing longer projects that are much slower, that are much more
Mhm.
in depth. And I think nothing I'm making is at the level of Severance, but I think
Mhm.
Severance is a great example of Severance feels like the opposite of internet content because
Mhm.
it's gone back to this not bingeable, releasing a
Mhm.
week at a time, has a strategy and an outline of where it's going rather than just
Yeah.
tripping out stuff as you're
Yeah.
making it.
Absolutely.
Um, I don't know if any of that is like is relevant per se, but that's
Yeah.
how it relates to. I really relate to this idea of kind of always feeling like, what's the reverse move
Mhm. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do relate to that because like, it's like the word that came to mind when you're saying that was format, and it's like,
Mm.
in a way, the traditional format now feels like a subversion of format, like you're saying, because
Yeah,
you have to
totally.
you have to, like, sit and wait for apps like I think 'cause I remember Apple TV, I remember watching the morning show and that, and I was getting used to that, like, waiting every week. I'm like, "Oh, I forgot what this feels like, I forgot what it feels like to not have everything on demand."
Mhm.
And we've actually been, like, inspired in our house, we've actually have decided that we're gonna start, like, a DVD collection, like, we're
Nice.
like we're like, "Hey, we're going back." I was like,
Yeah,
and the only shift there is, like, it's the form. Like, it's
yeah,
a lot of the movies, I could get them digitally, virtually. The movie doesn't change in most of these cases, but the form, the experience of, like, picking up the disc and putting it in the DVD player, and, like, that whole experience is a subversion in a way. And
yeah,
I just think that that is so cool because it takes the pressure off of, like, being an artist always needing to have to reinvent. It's like, maybe
yeah,
you don't have to reinvent. Like, maybe it's something that already exists, but we've kind of, like, gotten away from it, like, in the name of efficiency or whatever, and you can actually go back to that. So, yeah.
I love that.
I find that very freeing.
Yeah, I love that. I think yeah, I mean, I think there is a thing about create I mean, for me, kind of there is the reverse move of doing something different to what the culture is doing. And that there's an element of that where it's like keeping it fresh, doing new
Mhm,
things. But for
mhm,
me, this is something almost hear no artists talk about. And so it's kind of a weird thing because it's something that's so central to me, but I sometimes I usually feel pretty grounded in it, but sometimes I
mhm,
think, why am I thinking about this so differently than other people?
mhm,
Which is so much of what I feel like I'm doing is almost less of pushing forward and more like tapping into something we forgot. So, which is
mhm.
not necessarily going backwards, but it's like most of what I'm building stuff on is usually something that feels like a um I struggle to say fundamental truth because there's baggage with that idea, but it is stuff about like things that we forgot. And so there is like a going back thing, and not needing to reinvent. But
Mhm.
um you know, on this notion of DVDs and whatnot, another thing that I do a lot is I listen to internet radio. And again, it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
what my favorite is probably NTS, but the Lot radio is really good too. And they're just web pages that you go to and listen to radio. And there's something about, again, it was great when you had access to all the world's music and all the control was in your hands. But then at some point that becomes stale and you're like, will somebody else decide what to put on? And so
Yeah.
it's just this weird, like,
Yeah.
pendulum thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, it to me it feels like more than because I've really been struggling with the word nostalgia a lot lately
Yeah,
because I feel like
sure.
sometimes when I say like a lot of like that's kind of the default. Oh yeah, nostalgia. And I'm like I think it's more than that. I think it's
Uh,
more than like just going back and like longing for the past. Like it's not quite that, but for me it just feels more of like you're on a journey and you collect things along the way on the journey, and some of those things you leave behind and some of them you carry with you. Like for me, I mean it's very cliche, but I like to get postcards when I go places
mm,
because I'm like it's really cheap, you can get a postcard for $1 or less, and it's something you can always have. And I still like to do that even though I could take my own photos, even though I can find any of the photos online. And it's not it's just like this is like a record of like the journey that I've been on. Like it's a and not just like my artistic journey, but just like as a human. So why not figure out how to bring those things into the fold? Like when I was a kid, like I remember being in school, like I loved when we got to do cool things with paper. And back
yeah.
then it was like origami. I was really bad at it. And then like those little, you know, like little fortune teller things. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
making those.
My
I was so
my
bad at
youngest
it. I was
daughter is making tons of those
oh, I
recently.
love that. I was so bad at it, but I was so excited about it. So it's not like today I'm not
That's
like,
so much
oh,
art, I feel
yeah.
like. Yeah. I'm not good at it, but I'm loving it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of and but what you just said though, that's kind of been my approach now. Like with this whole collage thing I'm doing, I'm like, I actually don't know if I'm good at this kind of
Mm,
art. And it's not like, oh, I love collage as a kid. I don't even think I would have known
right.
that word. Like
Yeah.
it's not the exact same thing, but there's
Yeah.
just like traces, and it could just be like a flicker of like an emotion or like a curiosity, and I'm really intrigued by that, and I don't think those things are like stuck with time. I think the
Yeah.
same me that was interested in like origami as a kid is the same me that was like interested in like, oh, what's this Instagram app? Let me download that. So it's like it can change. Like just try to like just don't limit yourself maybe like to this moment exactly.
Mhm.
There's a poet I really like, David White.
Yes.
I need to go actually read the whole thing. I didn't. In terms of short form content, I just looked at it really quick. I was like, yes, great thoughts.
Yeah.
But he was actually talking about that, and like I think he was kind of describing he's like the limitations of like always thinking about the present. He was like, we're made of like the past too.
Mm,
He's like the past is like right here, and that's something we need to think about. So yeah, I think that to me, I think that extends a little bit further than just like nostalgia. Like I think that's how it always gets not always, but it
yeah.
often gets framed that way. And I'm like, oh, it's I think it's something more than that.
Yes. I I so relate to that. And there's a couple of things going on there that I think are really interesting. One is like, again, this idea of the artist kind of gravitating towards what's missing. It's interesting that the culture for the past decade or two has been so obsessed with being in the moment, present
Hmm.
moment, being in the
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. For artists like you to feel like, well, okay, yeah, great, good,
Hmm.
we're doing that, but also the past. There's
Hmm.
some, the past is a part of
Hmm.
us, and there's value in the
Yeah.
past, and I love what you said about the nostalgia thing because I get what you're saying where it's almost like a way it's kind of the way that we put a word on something in order to distance ourselves from it,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
again philosophers talk about like
Yeah.
the word tree makes you not have to engage with what the tree actually is. You're just
Hmm.
engaging with the
Yeah.
idea of a
The
tree. You're
idea
kind
of a
of
tree.
owning it.
Yeah.
And the same goes for like you're describing something, some kind of weird encounter or important encounter with the past that you're having, or not
Hmm.
even the past, but something true, maybe something timeless,
Hmm.
whatever. but because it has to do with the past, people
Mhm.
just think, oh yeah, nostalgia, love nostalgia, or
Mhm.
hate
Mhm.
nostalgia, or what,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I totally get that. But then
Mhm.
there's this other thing of, it's, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like, um, this feels more vague to me or like unclear, but I also think it's kind of like, it's interesting where there's like a conservation of, because we live in this techno futurism thing,
Mhm.
we're assuming that the ideal form is in the future.
Mhm.
Whereas, like,
Mhm.
what if like vinyl was the ideal form for music?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what
Oh,
if that was just it?
I
You know, but
I
we
have,
really
yeah.
think,
Yeah.
obviously some people do, but a lot as a culture, we kind of think everything that's worth having, doing, pursuing is
Mhm.
in the future, or it's the
Absolutely,
now,
yeah.
or it's like the
Yeah,
moment.
it's yeah, yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot because and I could rant for hours about
Oh,
the whole music
no,
thing.
no,
Oh, because so something I've thought about a lot was like, so I used to like be a professional musician. Like that was like I
yeah,
was like, I want to be a professional, I want to win awards and make albums and do all of that. And I really wrestled with that for a while because I think I became very like jaded by the music industry.
yeah,
And I think that kind of made me not want to make music anymore. And those things aren't the same. Music industry and music aren't the same things. They become the same things in our
right,
world, but
yeah,
there's music exists outside of industry. And I think that I stopped even thinking about like picking up a guitar like or playing piano because I had hooked it on to industry. I made music mean industry. And then I just started thinking about like just like historically speaking, like just within my own like family, like within like the black community and how important like singing was like communally and oral storytelling. And it's like all of those things mattered and still matter today, even whether or not the recording industry ever existed. I was
mm,
like, whether or not microphones ever got made, whether or not anybody recorded the song, like I can sing songs right now that my mother taught me, that her mother taught her, that her mother taught her, and generations all the way back to like the point of like where my ancestors were enslaved. And here I am today, and I can still carry those songs forward. And all of that is possible without it ever having been recorded.
yeah,
So I think about that kind of thing a lot because I think it can be very easy to, like you said, like we think about the future and like, okay, we've made the best version. And it's like, maybe that's just one version. Like
yeah,
maybe there's something to people just singing a song in a room and the song just happened one time in that room. Um and like if you've ever listened to like a live recording of an album, like it's like a totally different sound than like a studio recording of an album. Like
yeah,
the musicians being in the room together has a different sound than the musicians recording in parts. And I say that as someone who's done both studio sessions and live sessions as a guitar player. It's different. It's a different experience. Like I personally feel like I play better when I'm in the live room with everybody. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with the studio.
yeah.
And I'm just one person, but I think I think it could be valuable, like to just stay open to the fact that like, yeah, we might not always be at like the peak of the thing, you know?
I'm thinking about this through the lens of anybody that was listening to this as a podcast. And I'm thinking about how, as an outsider of this conversation, if I put myself in those shoes, I
Mhm,
start thinking about how this relates to their creative practice. And
mhm,
I think that what I find as a creator inspiring that you're saying is, I keep feeling like I will encounter so many artists that are frustrated with how noisy it is on the internet, and
Mhm.
how and longing for a previous version of Instagram, or
Yeah.
a time when, Flickr was around and you could like really break
Yes.
in and whatever. All that.
Chronological feeds. Oh,
Yeah,
God, I
like
love Flickr.
I can feel that, and there's a feeling of like, well, it's just too late now
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
you can't get started now. You can't, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and I think there's a through line here of this reverse move. Like, what's the reverse move? It also, I know we're both like storytelling people. And so I think you might relate to this. It also reminds me of like the Joseph Campbell, the return home. So
Mhm.
there's like that's also a reversal. And
Yeah.
it you talking about like and this is what I was going to say, is that the great thing about creative practice and creative journey is there's always a place to go, because there's
Mhm.
always a reversal. There's always like, oh,
Mhm.
well, yes, okay, creativity, similar to
Yeah.
what you're talking about with music being synonymous with industry.
Mhm. Mhm.
Creativity right now, if you're trying to do creative things, there is a way in which it feels like, to me, it's synonymous with being online, maybe
Yeah.
even chronically online,
Yeah.
where
Absolutely.
there is no creativity outside
Yeah.
of online.
Mhm.
Again, this kind of gets this thing of like people thinking that, like online versus IRL, except
Mhm.
most of us live like if it didn't happen online, it wasn't real life. Like that was
Mhm.
where it actually where it becomes
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because it's like on the world stage. Like
Mhm.
I don't know why, but there's a bunch of reasons. But that's what I hear in what you're saying is like, okay, yes, the way that we've been going,
Mhm.
moving forward, moving in technology, moving in online, has become incredibly congested, and
Mhm.
but there's always a move, and that move
Yeah.
might not look like Spotify. It might look like being in a room with people,
Mhm.
like, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And I, as an introvert,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's been hard for me to wrestle
Yeah.
with sometimes, because it's like Instagram in particular has been an ideal form for my introverted neurodivergent self, because I can think and publish and share in small parts, and I've it's been helpful for me in that way.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like as a like and I wonder if like people have different thresholds of like where they're just like, no, I think this is becoming harder for me. For me, like the threshold was when Instagram started like mimicking the feed where it's like they're showing your posts to more people who don't follow you. That was
Yeah.
like a big like threshold moment for me, because I was like, so much of what I do is like about like the community that I'm talking like it's hard for me to have to start from scratch like every single post, and just throw it out into the wild. So that was very challenging for me, and it might sound strange to say, but like I've kind of grieved some of that loss of like, oh, I kind of miss that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, what's been really and it took, I would say I've been like wrestling with this for like a year and a half. But right now I'm working on a new book, and that's been very exciting. And like I have been going back through things that I've shared on Instagram as engagement has gone down, as like the followers haven't, all that stuff. And I've been letting the comment section, no matter how few comments there were, like letting that remind me of like, hey, what happened here still mattered, and bringing that into a book form, and like seeing like when someone mentioned like, oh, I like that analogy you used about the tree or whatever, I'm like, oh, that is like evidence of like work that I've done that's valuable. It's not, if Instagram went away tomorrow, if I deleted the app tomorrow, that it doesn't lose its value, even because it's changing form. It's like
Mhm.
I can carry that with me, even on this very like ephemeral, like temporary form. It's like back then when I posted it, yeah, I was probably thinking about the algorithm, and I was probably mad that it didn't perform as well because I spend a long time on my work.
Yeah.
Um, I spent a lot of hours, like every single word choice, every color choice. Like I spent a lot of time on my work. So yeah, it can be a bummer when it's like the engagement's not there, or you see the engagement go down. Like I actually feel like the more time I spend on work sometimes, like the less engagement
Yeah.
it gets.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this about? But at the same time, like, even if there were just a few comments, or I like sometimes I've been like going through old emails that I've gotten, and that's from my mailing list. I love having a mailing list because it's searchable when like people have emailed me. So I've been like just searching for different things of like I do a lot with monarch butterfly. So I'll like type in monarch butterfly, and I can see from like 5 years if someone mentioned a monarch butterfly in an email to me, they were responding about something, and I take that with me into a new project, which is a book, like an old-fashioned book that you can print
Yeah.
out. So it's all connected, and I think that's really cool because it's like, even as I think relationship with a form, a platform, whatever form changes, you can kind of shift it into new spaces too. So
I love that. I love what you commented on with this change in the form. Everyone, you're not alone. There's a lot of grief on the way that the platforms have changed, the internet's changed, the where it's
mhm,
going, what all that kind of stuff. And conceptualizing those changes, verbalizing those changes, because
mhm,
I think that's one of the things that's so hard about all of this is the thing you were talking about at the start, which is this black box element.
mhm,
That one of the things that is creating some level of like micro, it's like a, it's, it's almost, I wouldn't call it traumatic. That's too far, but there's this thing of where there's a psychological war that's happening when you're using these apps,
mhm,
and it's a black box element where you're not a that's one of the things that's so disconcerting about engaging is that you it's not transparent what's happening,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like in other lot, like it's one of we're aware of when you go to go buy a car,
Mhm.
we are aware that this is a psychological warfare. That's why
Mhm.
most people don't want to do it. If you're
Yeah.
good at it and you like my older brother, he loves it. He's also this kind of person where
Yeah.
he's the kind of person that would sell you a car. He has
I
sold
love
cars,
it.
okay? So he likes it. It's a game, right? But we're aware of those spaces in real life where
Mhm.
there's something, there's more going on. And I think that one thing that I thought was really powerful in terms of decision making in what is the reversal, what is moving forward, what is my reaction going to be. One of the things you got to do is like think about what is happening and conceptualize it. So this idea of there was a
Mhm.
time where what you were making was for a community, was for a group
Mhm.
of people, and then that shifted to now 80% of the people that see this don't have any context, and it
Mhm.
conceptualized it for me in a way where for a long time you're making a TV show where there's a through line every episode and you can't start
Mhm.
on episode 87. You have to
Yeah.
start with an understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas then it was overnight, the network said, actually, this is a thing where everyone that sees it's going to be expecting this to be self-contained.
Yeah.
And the thing is, no one's giving you those notes. No
Yeah.
one's giving you that heads up. And so
Mhm.
that's why I like us talking about it too, because there's not a space to think about, know about, talk about. And so and
Yeah.
we just I end up becoming incredibly suspicious of all of these moves. One of the things that I'm really suspicious about is these platforms giving creators tools and tips and tutorials and trends and investing all of this stuff into helping you. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, why? Why are
Yeah,
you doing that?
exactly.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know why you're
Yeah.
doing that because you're a
Yeah.
TV network that doesn't pay for your shows. That's
Yeah.
why. You want us to make it. And I was thinking about the other day, like,
Yeah.
remember when my creative strategy was I'm going to post a still image on Instagram once a week.
Yeah.
And that was my, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's just, yeah, I don't know what I'm getting
Yeah.
at other than I'm just like saying what you're saying in a
I
different way.
think and I think you're kind of like naming the terms, and I
Yeah.
think that's what you're like. And I think you have to kind of name it and start to name it, because if you don't, it just kind of just becomes like this endless thing. And like one thing that's been helpful for me, and like one, and that's when I mentioned like the showing it beyond my community of like it's okay to start with like what you don't like it's okay to say like, no, it's that feature that's pushing me to want to delete the whole thing, like it's that
Yeah.
specific thing. Like there's some things that don't bother me as like a lot of people, like with Instagram in particular, a lot of people, for them it may have been reels. Like when Instagram reels was launched, they were like, I just can't deal with that. I doesn't bother me as much because I follow a lot of animators and motion graphics. And I'm like, this is actually great. Like
Right.
I like the feature. But so I think knowing what those things are, because then that helps you like make connections with what you might want to change. Cause it's like you don't have to go make your own Instagram. Like you don't have to go recreate the whole thing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, the part that stresses me out is the fact that like people that the stuff I'm sharing is just going to have to go out all over the place, and then I have to manage that. Like, and I even narrowed it down because when I started talking about this, a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, don't worry about the haters," and I was like, "Okay, yeah." And I realized I was like, actually, I've been on the internet a long time. Like it takes a lot. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. I'm like, it's the management of it. It's the fact that people can come in and derail the whole conversation. I'm like, it's from being totally transparent. It's more just annoying.
Yeah.
I'm not offended. I'm like, I'm just annoyed because we're trying to have
It's
a
just not what you want
conversation.
to do. This is not
Yeah,
what your
exactly.
time. Right.
Yeah, so I'm like, "Oh, that annoys me." It's not to say that I don't want to connect with other people out there, but it's like I get to decide what the terms are and in the way that I do that. So I've been really I just started an old-fashioned blog again and I've just started scheduling posts on that, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know, like everyone's not going to come over to the blog, but I'm really excited about the people that do, because those are the ones I'm gonna look forward to talking to the people who are coming over to the blog. And I think it's okay to just shift and change. I'm like, we might talk 10 years from now or 5 years from now, and it might be totally different. And I think I've just, as I reflect on like how long I have been like an internet infused artist, I'm like, it's changed a lot, and let me just focus on like being authentic in all of those changes. It's like it's like that's the best I can do. And it's like if something is not working the way it used to, you're allowed to name that and say,
Yeah.
"Yep, I'm going to change this part, or I'm going to change all of it." So, yeah.
So one thing that I've mentioned a bunch of times on the show, but it's something I think about probably once a week. So and it's always useful to remember. So I'll say it again. But there's a part in one of Austin Kleon's books where he talks about
Well,
this punk band that can't decide on influences because they just can't agree, and so instead they decide on what they hate, and they're not going to be.
yes.
And I love that. And then and then I take it the way I use that idea. And what I like about it is that it hacks our negativity bias. It's
Mm,
our
yeah.
brains are naturally negative. So it's actually easier to start with what do I hate than it is
Mhm.
what do I love, and then
Mhm.
reverse it. And I actually think
Mhm.
even in politics, I wish people did more of this where, yeah, tell me what you're against or know what you're
Mhm.
against, but
Mhm.
don't stop there. Hack your brain and say, okay,
Mhm.
what's the reverse? What would this look?
Yeah.
This is one of the things they talk about with like climate change. What was so hard about getting people on board with it is that so much of it was like, don't do this. And it
Mhm.
didn't present a vision of the future
Mhm.
that was compelling
Yeah.
because it took the negative bias, but it didn't
Mhm.
reverse it. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
love this thing you're saying where in order to figure out what your creative values are and live
Yeah.
into them and know what the reversal move is, you have
Mhm.
to know which way is the current going
Yeah. Yeah.
that you don't like. What is it?
Yeah.
Don't just
Yeah.
feel it, but identify it. And I love that you pinpointed this is where it went wrong for me because again,
Yeah.
it wasn't what everybody
Mhm.
assumed it would be. And so
Mhm.
that's a great like call to adventure thing of
Yeah.
okay, so you don't like where things are going, but that's too
Mhm.
general to actually use as a prompt. In order to
Yeah.
know what the reversal would be, you need to know what is it that's going a direction you don't
Exactly.
like. Yeah, I love that.
Yes. Yes, and with stories, how many good stories start with conflict? They
Yes.
present you with a
Yeah, that's
conflict,
the
a
prompt.
very
That's the
clear,
prompt.
yeah, it's the prompt. It's that tension point. So it's like you're allowed to name that. And I think that can be hard for like artists because I feel like you were mentioning like all the tools and stuff, the platform. There's like this undertone of like be grateful that you get to share
Yeah.
your work in this space. So I think you just kind of get used to like I feel like I had that posture for a while. Like I'm so grateful that I got to use Instagram to share my art, and I am grateful.
Sure.
I
Right.
am. I truly
Yeah.
am.
Yeah.
And at the same time,
And you
we're
can be done.
we're
You can also
yes.
be, or whatever, you know,
Yes.
you
It's
can
like
have
and at
complaints.
the
They can be true at the same time. You can be have complaints and gratitude at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's a conflict. There you go.
Yeah,
There's the
exactly.
beginning of a story. So yes, I have been like welcoming that. And I'm like, yeah, I can give you a long list of like those
Yeah.
things, but I'm naming it. I'm naming what they are because that helps me figure out where to go next. So yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And I've had a similar thing with doing Substack, which feels like it's a reversal into some different
Yeah.
things,
Hmm.
blogging,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and creating community. So yeah, I love that. The one question I was going to ask you that's
Yeah.
a question that I think about a lot, because I also think it's kind of a seed of a story where it's the idea of like, what did you get wrong that you've
Hmm.
changed your mind about? So
Oh, yeah.
going back to the start of your creative journey could be like the very start, including music, career, and all that, or it could be start of Instagram.
Hmm.
Um, what is the biggest shift that you've had in how you think about making creative work?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, where do I begin? So many.
So many things,
Yeah,
man.
I look back and I'm like, wow, what were you doing?
I'm
What were
gonna
you
do an
doing?
episode
Yeah.
that's 10 things I got wrong in 10 years of podcasting.
Yeah. Oh,
How
that's
things
good.
I've
Yeah,
changed my, opinion on as
that's
I've
good.
moved through. But yeah.
Yes. I think it kind of gets into the I don't know what the word is, but I kind of got at it a little bit when I was saying like feeling like I couldn't really say what bothered me
Mm,
and feeling like as an artist, and this is true in music and in poetry and everything I've done, like you need to be grateful that you have the opportunity
mm,
and not allowing myself to like advocate for myself and and defend myself because I'm like, I'm supposed to be grateful. I'm supposed to be so excited that I get to do a project. But now I know how to look at things and say, oh, no, they're asking too much. I'm not doing that. So yeah, it might sound kind of cliche, but when I think about like stress and strain and like things I would tell myself, like they're like, you have 3 seconds to talk to yourself 10 years ago. It'd be like, hey, it's okay to say no. You need to say no more often. Like you don't have to just accept everything because and like on a personal note, I think that was also true because I was a kid who didn't have a lot of friends growing up. So I have been through this like friendships and stuff too, where I felt like I had to just take whatever friends I could get because I didn't have a lot of friends. So I think I also brought that into art as well. It was like, well, you know that you live in a world where artists don't get paid, where artists can't do this. So you better say yes. And then I'm like, wait, I got paid $50 to do 50 hours of work.
yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't work either. So you have to, yeah, advocate for myself. That's been very hard. That's hard for me. I still think I'm working on that, but I've gotten a lot better and a lot bolder about it.
Mm,
So yeah, that's something that I would encourage people earlier on. Like, yeah, you're allowed to say like, oh no, like I don't know if I like how this contract is structured. Like, you might not be, you might not know all the lingo and everything, but ask somebody who does. Like, you don't have to just like accept the structure for what it is. Like you're allowed
yeah.
to ask those questions early. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really relate to that. And one thing I feel like I had a gift growing up was my dad is an accountant,
Mm,
and I could see that he was passionate about business in a similar way that artists are about art.
mm-hmm,
And so I think I realized, like, anybody that's doing what they love or what they want to do taps into that. It's
mm-hmm,
not just artists. Like, he feels lucky to do what he's doing. He
mm-hmm.
feels purpose. He feels creative and expressed.
Yeah.
And so I think that I mean, I have the same issues that you do with that. I'm not saying I don't, but I do think I think I have this feeling of, yeah, just because this is in a way, actually, because I love this and it gives me an edge,
Mm-hmm,
not to be good at it, to take it seriously. It's why you're asking me to do it.
mm-hmm,
Um, I don't need to be selling myself short, actually,
mm-hmm.
because that would be the ideal.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, I love that
Yeah.
notion.
Yeah. I had I think I like that you use the accountant example too, because I feel like something about accountants and like people who work in those kind of spaces, they're very clear about what they don't do. Like if there's
Right.
like a certain kind
Yeah.
of accounting they don't do,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I don't do that. Like
Yeah.
that's it. That's all there is to it. And I think that for us, it can be harder to name that. But like I had a big moment like that, I think maybe like 2 years ago, where I had to realize I went to the MoMA, or do you say MoMA? Is it the MoMA or MoMA? I don't know.
It's
Never been before, but it was really cool. And I walked out of the MoMA after years of wanting to make it one of like top modern art museums in the world in New York. I walked out of there and I was like, oh, that's actually not an ambition of mine.
yeah.
I was like, I've had that on like a list of things that, oh, I guess I should do that if I want to have it. And I was like, actually, I don't care. I was like, that was great. But
Yeah.
I did not feel that way when I walked in. I'm like, I'm somebody who I love to teach. And that might be the total opposite approach of another artist. But when I'm in like a classroom setting and I'm teaching a workshop, I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like I was made for that. Like I think about like a 1992 version of myself. Like if I were this person right now in 1992, what would I be doing? And I know I can see it. I can almost smell the room. I am teaching a weekly workshop at a local library on how to make collage poetry art. That's what I'm doing.
I love it.
That's what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm not in an art museum. That's great. That's wonderful. Maybe I go visit it sometimes. Maybe if somebody approaches me and is like, oh yeah, you really, really want to do it. I'm like, sign me up. That sounds great. That's not what I'm pursuing.
I I
I'm
love this idea around one of the things that I talk to my high school daughter about is, if you're an intuitive person, you're going to be aware of what the current is. You know, that's a gift. You're lucky to be aware of that if you have that awareness, but it's also a curse because then you have to decide what you're going to do with that information. Are
yeah.
you going to
Mm-hmm.
become something you're not just because that's what is cool?
Yeah.
Or are you going to be aware of what it is, tap into it if it's interesting and relevant to you, or reverse it
Mm-hmm.
if that's not you?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
I love that. So and also maybe as another practice that someone could do, that like putting this to work, what did you say about you could be there, smell like what the feeling is of like where you would be?
Yeah.
Like, how could you talk a little bit about that again?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it sounds kind of sad to say it this way, but it was realizing all the places I felt like I didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And not because of any wrongdoing on anyone's part. Like I've been in spaces and music and and it's great. I'm like, oh, these people, they've got a cool thing going. This is great. This is awesome, but it's not me. Like it's not, I don't sit up and like, oh, I can't wait to come back. I'm like, this is fun. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, so yeah, it's not like I mentioned like live music. I love recording live music, but that's not something I feel like I have to do often.
Yeah.
Um, And I was like, where do I just want to go? And I keep wanting to go back and back and back. And I'm like, okay, it's not on stage. I'm like, I'll do that. I will be on stage. I'm like, it's certainly not Instagram live. I'm like, I'll do that. But it's not, I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to do another Instagram live. Like, that's just not me. I'm like, it's not posting on Instagram. I do it because it's there, but I'm like, it's not that. I'm like, oh, it's the freaking library.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's my spot. That's my place. I'm like, I want to go back to the library. I was like, I would just like be the lady at the library. Like, do you even work here? No, I don't. I'm just here all the time. So yeah, it was a lot of figuring out like where I didn't feel like I belonged, even when the place was nice, even if I spent years there and I'm thinking about it later, I'm like, that was a great time. I learned a lot in that season, but where are the places where I feel just a little bit more free?
I I love this as a prompt because again, I can't help but conceptualize it through the lens of like high school. Like
Mm.
we're more aware, at least maybe it's just me. I don't know. I can't put this on everybody, but we're more aware, we're hyper aware. You go into the lunchroom, which table are you supposed to sit at? Like, what is the table
Mhm.
where you're supposed to want to sit there?
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
And, I had this experience in high school where a few years in, I was sitting at the cool table and then I wasn't happy being there. I
Mm.
hated that table. Every
Yeah.
conversation they were talking about, I was like, no, what did I do? Why am I here?
Yeah.
And for the record, I probably just like, I'm not sure they were thrilled I was there. Okay. It goes both ways maybe. So we have this awareness of the peer pressure, where you're supposed to be as an artist
Mhm.
and as a picture, just to, relate it so that maybe people could see it from different perspectives for themselves. For me as a picture book maker, there's like the awards and the spaces where this is where you should want to be. You should want to
Mhm.
get a Caldecott. Look, Caldecott people, if you're listening, I'll take one. Okay. I'm not saying I won't, but I also think like, I actually feel like I'm somewhere in between like the really artsy picture book people that I love
Mhm.
and also the really like mainstream stuff. And it's somewhere in between that's more like maybe in the entertainment space,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
it's not the
Mhm.
awards. And so anyway, I just think it's worth
Yeah. Absolutely.
reflecting on this as an artist because I unconsciously move towards the cool table, trying to.
Mm.
And I think I
Yeah.
have to feel like that's natural.
Yeah.
And that it's worth being like, yeah, but is that a place where you would feel home? Or is that
Mm.
just where you're supposed to
Mhm.
want to live?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like that you said unconsciously because I think that it's like you can't, it's hard to ignore like this societal thing
Yes.
completely. It's like if
Yes.
you're making things and you're trying to connect with real people or real industries, it's hard to just ignore them, completely. So yeah, I think being aware of like, yeah, I may have spent time at that table. And now that you've been at that table, you can speak the lingo. Like
Sure.
you know the jargon, like
Yeah.
how they talk, how they engage, like and that could be useful. That can be very useful. And it's also useful when your time is up or when you want to expand. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go over here.
Another way this relates back to this conversation or where creative people might be right now is an observation I've been playing with on the show for a little while is I think a lot of visual artists, myself included, uh, have a grief around online spaces, especially
Mhm.
Instagram, because there was a moment where the these worlds collided, and
Mhm.
Instagram was both the visual art platform and the cool kid table.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
what happens is when that's no longer true,
It's a
do
good
you
point.
reinvent who you are to stay at the table?
That's a good
Or
point.
you accept like, I'd actually rather be at other tables. I'd rather be at the blog
That's
table.
good.
You know what I mean?
That is really good. I'm so glad you said that because I'm like, oh, I think that's a tension I've been feeling.
Right.
Because I'm like, I'm not a cool kid table person. Like I won't get into my horrible high school stories. But
Hey,
let's just say,
embarrassing story for me. I shouldn't have been there.
yeah,
That was a bad priority. That's
yeah, well, I'll go in and tell it. It's very short. I
okay.
was
Go.
sitting at the table by myself, and these two kids came to sit with me. And one of the girls, the boy goes to sit down, and the girl puts her hand on his shoulder and looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Don't sit here. No one is sitting here."
Oh my
I'm
God.
like, you didn't have to look at
Oh
me.
my God.
So yeah, I was not over there. I was like, you could have just
Looking
left me alone.
through
I
you.
was like, I was fine by myself. Like you
And
didn't have to
for the
do that.
record, I spent
Yeah,
a good 2 months sat by myself when I moved to that high school.
yeah,
So that was where a lot of
yeah,
that motivation to get at the cool table probably
yeah.
came from. So
Yeah,
I'm just relating to, I know the
yeah.
feeling
You
of
know
being
the feeling.
alone too.
Yeah, it's. But I had not thought about what you just said about like how Instagram became both of those things at the same time. But it's like as the platform is shifting, it's like you kind of have to decide where you're gonna go. And I think that's what I've dealt with because I'm like, I don't want to go that way. Like
Yeah.
I need my like kind of weird kind of space to really say what I'm trying to say. So wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna remember that.
And
Yeah.
I had that same thing of by junior year, I was like, actually, the kids that work at the cinema and the theater kids at school,
Hmm.
like, I get that they're not what the high schoolers think is cool, but
Hmm.
they're so much cooler to me. They're so
Yeah.
much, I love these people.
Hmm.
And I would rather sit at a table where I'm having the time
Yeah.
of my life,
Hmm.
and be where the society says you should be. And I think a lot of
Absolutely.
artists are having to figure that
Yeah.
out. Like, and
Absolutely.
because he doesn't, because also just like you said, like, going back to old formats, going to different formats, there's all these other industries and worlds that exist that you don't have to be in the hot place at the hot
Hmm.
time to,
Hmm.
you know, make it work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Massive thanks to Morgan for coming back to the show and hanging and sharing so much insight. She has just got so much depth and is just such a profound and also light human that I just love getting to spend time with. So thanks, Morgan, for giving me some of your time, giving the listeners some of that time. I'm back, like I said I would be, with the creative call to adventure. Today, the CTA is the 5 senses of belonging. And here's what we're going to do. This is inspired by what Morgan was talking about, feeling like just imagining a 90s library and just feeling so at home. And I want to think about this idea of what table at school do you belong in, not which is the one you're supposed to be at. Like, I remember being at the popular table and feeling the itch, the discomfort. It's what I thought I wanted. But then going and sitting with the theater kids and the kids that loved emo and getting into indie music and all that, and just feeling like, oh, okay, I feel comfortable here. That is a great feeling. So today, here's what I did. I just stopped and I said, I'm going to go through each sense and just feel like what feels right now. And it kind of put me in an interesting spot because I really pushed myself not to think of where I'm at right now, where my studio is, my illustration studio at home. Like, I try not to think about all that. I just try to feel like what would feel good, what would feel right. And I started thinking about smell, and instantly I'm thinking coffee. And then I'm thinking, what can I hear? And I'm thinking some maybe like music that's a little bit different that I don't even know what it is. And I'm thinking, what do I see? And I'm thinking, oh, it's like the feeling of like a cool coffee shop. And I go through each one of these and I start realizing like, oh, maybe what I would like to do is start writing in a coffee shop again. Like, so it's been years since I've tried that. And I remembered like, oh, I really like the stimulation that comes from that. This kind of weird extroverted, introverted space of being in public, but having your own little space and getting into a little writing zone. And so it gave me a little prompt of something different that I could do that would maybe shake up the stagnant or sense of things not fitting, not feeling right that I've been experiencing recently. And I also thought about last week doing a talk and how being on stage and the little like dust of a stage under your feet and the kind of tone and emotion and feedback, verbal feedback that you get when you're on stage, like what feels right, what's the right tone. So all of these senses started to kind of tune me into something beyond what my everyday experience is right now, which is the key, because we're trying to see if there's ways to shake up where we're at right now. So that is my challenge to you. Go through your 5 senses and just say what sounds not doable, not what you already have, not what already is an option, but just what sounds attractive, what sounds where you could just, if you were there, your shoulders would drop, your mind might light up and spark. What would be the sensory experience? And then ask yourself, how could you integrate that in a small way this week or this month and creatively inject some newness and novelty and exploration to see if you can find, and you might go do that. It might not be right. You might have to do this a few times, but if you're feeling that chafing in your everyday of your creative practice, you might need to shake it up. And I think this is a good way to explore that. Again, thanks Morgan for being on the show. Thanks to Sophie Miller for being a producer and editor on the show. Thanks to Connor Jones for video editing, audio editing, sound design. Thanks to Yoni Wolf of the band Y for our theme music and soundtrack. And thanks to all of you for listening. Until we speak again, stay pepped up.